Accept. Call the meeting to order. If you please rise to honor our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Conway?
Here.
Mr. Gignac?
Here.
Mr. Leary?
Here.
Ms. Martin?
Here.
Mayor Murphy?
Here.
Ms. Rostikowicz?
Here.
Ms. Scott? 6 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. We have first up the minutes, approval of the minutes of the regularly scheduled meeting of Wednesday, December 5th. Motion to accept and place on file by Ms. Rostikowicz, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next we have memorials. First is for Dolores L. Lemieux, mother of Lisa McHugh, a Lowell High School clerk scheduler. Florence Gleason Charlton, mother of Molly Sheehy, retired Middlesex Community College dean, and grandmother of Ann Sheehy, Moody School teacher. And Dr. Patrick J. Mogan, former superintendent of schools and father of the Lowell National Historic Park. If you'd please rise in a moment of silence and darken chambers. We have under unfinished business, ratification of the memorandum of agreement with the UTL for the Merkin Elementary School Level 4 agreement. What's the wish of the committee? Move to approve by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Leary. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Rostikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott? 6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Next, we have motions. The first motion by Kristen Ross-Sikowicz. Request the superintendent furnish the school committee with a sample of the performance-based budget format that will be utilized in the FY 2014 budget. Seconded by Mr. Leary. Ms. Ross-Sikowicz.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion pretty much speaks for itself. I know we had discussions in the past with regard to changing up our budget format, and I think, Mr. Lang, you can speak to this a bit more. There are, I think, recommendations coming down through our MASBO.
Yeah, one of the things when we spoke, I just recommended to you is we did middle of November, end of November, participate in the MASBO review. So probably sometime right after the first of the year, we'll be receiving the report back from them. And one of the areas that I asked them to really pay close attention to was our existing budget format, as well as the budget formats of local communities and other communities our size, and make some recommendations with regard to how our setup and templates work compared to others. So I would, as soon as we get that report back in January, perhaps we could refer it to one of the subcommittees, really start looking at our existing format, what the recommended changes are as part of the report, and agree on a format before we get into budget season.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Kristen Ross-Sikowicz. Request the superintendent work with staff to create video tours of all school buildings in the district for the purposes of parent outreach, school selection, fund development, and marketing. Seconded by Ms. Martin. Ms. Ross-Sikowicz.
Thank you. This motion actually comes as a result of having seen what the City of Salem School District had done with regard to providing more tools for outreach to our parents, our families, so that parents are better informed about making choices, selections, where their children go to schools within their district. And for our system, the way we're set up, for many parents, the first interaction that they have with any of our schools is through the Parent Information Center. Based on your address, or on a family's address, they're given a list of schools in a particular area that they can choose from. And there's very little familiarity up front as to, what those buildings actually look like, what the insides of the buildings look like, the amenities, the different services that are offered within those buildings. So this is an opportunity to sort of, mitigate that, so that our families have a much better informed in terms of their choices made. And in a couple of weeks back, I spent a whole week going throughout the district, and I had these conversations with our principals, and every single one of them was on board with this type of initiative, because they want to show off their schools. They're really proud of the schools that they oversee, and they want to show off. And I think it's a great opportunity, excuse me, to bridge that gap, and have that available on our website. So that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much. And I would ask, as we kind of start this process, because I do think it's a great idea, I think it's one more kind of medium we can use to give families across the city a real sense of our schools. But I think it might be a project, not knowing what their capacity is for the Lowell High School program. They do amazing work over there. We've seen the results of it, certainly here in this chamber, more than many, many times. And I think it could be a really interesting project for the students and the staff there to take on, to kind of maybe chart out from now through the end of June how they'd like to do this. And I think taking advantage certainly of the technical capacity at the high school and the expertise, both in terms of again, staff, and maybe perhaps most importantly, the inspiration of having students involved in the process. But I think it's a great motion, and I think we could really come up with a great product that we'd be able to share in a lot of different ways. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Secretary. I too think that this is a great motion, and I'm going to refer it to Mr. Penard, and I'm going to ask him right away to kind of come up with a short-term and a long-term plan. So then I will bring it to one of our subcommittees, just so you'll know, because of course for us to get to 20 whatever buildings by a small entity, it might take a longer period of time, but I think there's other ways we can do it. So what I'll do is I'll bring it to Mr. Penard, and I'll ask him for a plan within the next month, just so we can look to see, because we do have, now that we have the ability to show it on our website, it would be really a quick turnaround. So I'll be back in touch with you with a plan within the next month.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion by Kristen Ross Sikowicz, requests the superintendent seek proposals from an external professional firm to review and provide minimum as well as recommended industry standards with regard to school safety and the security of public school facilities comparable to Lowell High School. Seconded by Ms. Martin. Ms. Ross Sikowicz.
Thank you again, Mayor. The motion speaks for itself. Actually, the Student Support Services Subcommittee met early last week, and this was not a motion out of that particular subcommittee, but the recommendation by the task force that was pulled together with regard to LHS safety by the superintendent suggested that we actually go out and bring in an external set of eyes to give us a baseline and establish where we're at and where we need to be in order to ensure that our high school is as safe as it possibly can be.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? Ms. Martin.
Thank you. I will support this motion. I think that we've discussed for a long time the situation at the high school and how we can make it a safer environment. We've made a lot of, I think, important investments in that, and I think moving forward we recognize that we need to continue to pay attention to the issue. I'd also like to say that it might be, as we're putting out, my understanding is we need to put out a request for proposals to the various firms that do this work. I think it would be interesting as we put out this proposal to see certainly the high school as a separate entity, but it would be really interesting to get a sense of what a baseline, again, for all of our school buildings. That may be inordinately expensive, so I wouldn't vote on it tonight, but I do think that it would be interesting information for us to have moving forward. Our other school buildings are certainly safer just by dint of the size of them and the limited access, which is something that has been put in place across our district with good reason. But it would be, particularly to have a consultant that could come in and tell us what other school systems are doing, if there are kind of, different technologies that we may be able to employ that would be helpful and cost-effective. I think that it's certainly an area where I don't feel I have a great deal of expertise. So I think it would be really interesting to see what a firm like this could do for us. And I think certainly based on what the task force had kind of come up with during their deliberations, seems like a reasonable next step for us. So I would make a friendly amendment if possible to include in the RFP a request to get similar information for the rest of our school sites.
Sure. Mr. Leary?
It goes with the motion a little bit, but it's a little bit different. Have we had the task force take a look at K through 8? Has it just been solely to the high school, right? Okay. I mean, I guess they're still in place and still functional. I mean, if it's not a form of a motion, but just if we could have them start looking at K through 8, at least initially do an initial diagnostic of what our systems are. It might be helpful that we take a look at the federal standards, because there are standards that are already in place, and ensuring that our folks have at least the professional development to use those federal standards. At least they're aware of it. We have a lot of change in principles. We have a lot of new principles. And the professional development's ongoing, and it can't be a bad thing at least to reintroduce that, and maybe at least bring it up as a topic to that committee that we brought together to at least begin that review. I know, as Committeewoman Martin stated, they are safer in terms of they're usually one entrance, and you have a camera at the door, and you buzz in, and they look at you, and they can identify. But some of the areas, too, in terms of, do we have a broken window that's not fixed? Do we have doors that might not be safe? I know the custodians are always putting in the tickets, but if it's something that we need to take a look at a higher level, that this needs to be done, like, immediately. But anyway, if we could it's not part of the motion, and I apologize for going on, but it's something I think that we need to ensure that we're re-emphasizing. I know our staff is, they're awesome, and they've done an awesome job. Just the Maury is one most recent example, but just reiterating it can't be a bad thing. Thank you.
Mr. Conway?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, I applaud this motion. I think it's extremely important, but I also think the amendment to it by Ms. Martin, I think, makes a lot of sense. And I think, and I could be completely wrong on this, but it might not be quite as expensive as we might envision, because of the fact that during that building program there were, I think many of those buildings were built very similar, so they would have a lot in common. So I think it's a great idea that we do invest the time and the money to make sure that it's all our schools, not just the high school. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further discussion on the motion as amended? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion by Mr. Robert Gignac, to request the superintendent invite the Lowell Youth Council to appear before the committee to discuss the results of the survey they conducted at the recent youth summit. Seconded by Mr. Leary. Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It also appears like one of my motions seemed to have disappeared from the agenda, but we can address that next week. This is a pretty simple motion. Last month I was invited to speak at the Lowell Youth Council First Annual Youth Summit, and I was unable to attend due to being in the hospital. But I know the mayor was present, and he spoke at the summit. And also at the summit, the youth distributed a survey to dozens of teens throughout the city, and on that survey they collected a wide variety of data that the students encounter on a daily basis, from exposure to drugs, exposure to guns, violence, gangs. And the Youth Council was kind enough to provide me with the results. and I was shocked by many of them. And rather than me forwarding the results to my colleagues and just looking at numbers, I reached out to them and asked them if they'd be interested in discussing these issues with us, and they were thrilled to be able to talk about these issues, because this council works very hard to address a number of major issues that they face each day, and unfortunately, oftentimes they go unheard. So I think this would be a nice place for them to discuss what they find are issues throughout the city, and maybe we can do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have subcommittees. The Student Support Services Subcommittee report and approval of the minutes of Tuesday, December 11th, 2012. Ms. Ross-Sikowicz.
Thank you. The Student Support Services Subcommittee met on December 11th, and myself, Dave Conway, and Robert Gignac were in attendance, as well as Superintendent Jean Franco, Jay Lang, LHS Headmaster Ed Rosmerick, LHS Discipline and Operations Specialist Roxanne Howe, LHS Housemaster Dave Slattery, and LHS Senior Building Custodian Patrick Harrigan. The primary item on the agenda was a safety review of Lowell High School. At the Student Support Services Subcommittee meeting, the superintendent was instructed, at the Student Support Services Subcommittee meeting of September 13th, 2012, the superintendent was requested to create a task force comprised of personnel from within the school system and experts from outside of the school system to conduct a local review of Lowell High School to identify safety issues. LHS Discipline and Operations Specialist Roxanne Howe reviewed the final report with the subcommittee, a copy of which is attached to our packet and is available online on our website, attached to the packet. The subcommittee members expressed their appreciation for the work of the LHS Safety Audit Committee. We discussed various elements of the final report pertaining to security systems, i.e. video cameras, security staffing levels, electronic access control, facility maintenance needs, and capital infrastructure improvements that were identified within the report. So the motion coming out of this subcommittee by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gignac, was to request the administration solicit proposals for an electronic access control system to be incorporated at Lowell High School in conjunction with the exterior door replacement project.
Motion by Ms. Ross-Sikowicz, second by Mr. Leary. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Ms. Ross-Sikowicz.
Okay, that ends my report. I'd like to submit that as a report of progress.
Motion to accept as a report of progress by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Leary. Mr. Gignac.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that I wanted to express my sincere appreciation of the hard work that the Safety Review Task Force did at the high school. And what they did is they put together a lengthy report on all of the issues that the high school faces in regards to safety. Everything from broken windows, broken doors, to security cameras that might not be in the best possible places. And what they did was an exceptional amount of work, and it took quite a bit of time out of their regular position. So I do appreciate, we had a number of people that were from the district and from outside the district, and I'm glad that we're able to look at these issues and address them, hopefully address some of these issues before we get that outside firm to come in and look at some stuff. If you look at this report, there's quite a few issues that pertain to the facility in fact of repairs, and those fall under the city. And I gave the city manager a copy of this report to make sure that he was aware of all these issues. I know that the custodians have put tickets into the system for these issues to be addressed, and due to staffing cuts and restraints, a lot of these issues just have gone without being fixed in quite a bit of time. So he's assured me that he's going to address these issues over the past few months, and hopefully this will make our school a safer place. So again, thank you to the Safety Task Force.
Mr. Leary.
And in addition to sharing the report, I actually met with the city manager as well, and we'll be doing shortly a joint facility subcommittee meeting again in January or February to go over the progress that has been made over the summer, as well as what needs to be done going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the Lowell High School Subcommittee report and approval of the minutes of the meeting of Thursday, December 13th, 2012. Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the subcommittee meeting with myself, Robert Gignac, Kristen Ross Sikowicz, and also other members, James Leary, excuse me, Jean Franco, Superintendent, Claire Abrams, Assistant Superintendent, who I want to thank for putting this report together. Appreciate it. Brian Curley, Operations and Maintenance Director, and others that were present. Ed Rosemerick, the headmaster, Dr. Wendy Jack, the curriculum director at the high school, Roger Monod, Science and Health Education Department head, David Robertson, the Lowell High School Student Support Service Coordinator, and Thula Sabanda, representing the Youth Build Lowell. Excuse me, we had, I believe, 5 agenda items. The first one was the Lowell High School reception area, which we've talked about a few times. This was from a motion from Mr. Leary requesting the superintendent of staff explore the feasibility and provide a recommendation on establishing a central entrance and reception security station in the main lobby of the 1980 building of Lowell High School. That was when Brian Curley talked briefly about how much it would cost. He figured in the vicinity of about $3,500 to $5,000, which I think that was information that we didn't have prior, so I think that was an excellent piece of the puzzle. The other area that we are investigating, and I think probably waiting until perhaps budget times to find out what type of monies might be available for the personnel in that area, and to try to understand whether it would be clerical or whether it might be security or combinations or whatever. So anyways, there was a motion by myself and second by Mr. Gignac to recommend to the committee as a whole to accept the report as a report of progress.
Motion to accept as a report of progress by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Mr. Conway.
And the second item was Lowell High School Youth Build Partnership. And this briefly, it was an overview of a partnership between Lowell High School and Youth Build that was provided by Dr. Jack. And this program was to help seniors from dropping out of school. It's actually students that are very, very close for graduation. And and I think that this particular program will hopefully try to, again, as a pilot, try to hold on to those students that are at risk. And again, that's one of the issues and the problems that we have in our high school, is to try to improve on those graduation rates. And I think also what came up was the fact that at-risk students are identified in what they call TAT meetings, which is held between the guidance counselors and house masters. They also talked about the next steps for this future plan. Administration at the high school will continuously monitor the partnership and ensure that all the courses meet requirements for graduation for all students who participate. And after this pilot period, if successful, the plan will be to expand opportunities to a greater number of students, primarily in the juniors. So again, I think it's a program. It's another step in trying to save students from dropping out, and I certainly applaud the partnership. There was a motion by Mr. Gignac and second by Ms. Ross Sikowicz to recommend to the committee as a whole to grant permission for a small number of students to participate in the Lowell High School Youth Build Partnerships Program beginning next semester on January 23rd, 2003.
So moved by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gignac. Any discussion? Yep. Roll call, please.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Present.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott? 5 yeas, 1 absent, 1 present.
Thank you. Mr. Conway.
The next, excuse me, next agenda item was the science classes and labs, and this was a continued discussion from a previous subcommittee meeting at Lowell High School. As requested, more information was gathered on the changing of the science classes and labs at Lowell High School. I think this was an area that, needless to say, all parties involved, the personnel, school committee, certainly want to make sure that we get this correct, and I think that the information that came back by the Science Department Chair, Roger Monod, also Wendy Jack, and the head of the Student Support Service Coordinator, Mr. Robinson, David Robinson, I think certainly helped explain exactly what this particular situation was going to be, the change. And just very briefly, the results clearly indicate that making a change to 5 periods per week for the honors science classes still allows for instructional hours at or above our neighboring schools. This change in scheduling will also allow a lower number in numbers in college courses, as well as the ability to increase the elective offerings in the science department. And I think because of the major cutbacks that we had experienced in the last 5 years in the school department, this was a way perhaps to bring back some of those courses, as more time and teachers will be available to instruct. Furthermore, this change will increase the ability of the Lowell High School Science Department to meet both Mass Core and recently revamped Massachusetts State College minimum admissions requirements. And again, what came up too from this discussion was that Mr. Robinson certainly gave us a comfort level that this was not going to be a problem for students seeking admissions to colleges. There was a motion by Mr. Gignac, second by Ms. Rosikowicz, to recommend to the committee as a whole to change the schedule for honors and college science courses at Lowell High School to 5 days a week with labs.
Thank you. So moved by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Leary. On the motion, Mr. Leary.
Quickly, I just want to thank Dave Robinson and Roger Moreno as well. They came back over 2 meetings and really made a presentation that basically what they said is we want to take the high school, which is a level 3 school, and track it to be a level 1 school. And this would help assist to get students the electives that they need, whether it be the high honors or the college level, and give them the ability to get to those courses. So essentially, we're adding more options for everybody across the board. In addition, it'll also allow more students to attend a dual enrollment at UMass Lowell, which is something, because of our science schedules, was really dwindling, and a lot of folks couldn't, take that opportunity. So this is really, with their presentation and their confidence, I'm glad to support it, and I thank them for coming up with a creative initiative that'll help take a level 3 school and hopefully make it a level 1 in the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott? 6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Mr. Conway?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there's the fourth item, and we only have 5 in total. So the fourth one, school colors. This was in response to a motion that I made a while ago to ask the superintendent to report whether there has been a change in the official school colors, red and gray, for Lowell High School teams and other school-sponsored clubs and groups. And Mr. Rosmerick came in with a report, and his report was that there has been no official change in Lowell High School colors. And I think what spurred this on was that Thanksgiving, when Lowell High was playing Haverhill, there were a lot of people, alumni that were there, questioning the band, the color of the band uniforms. and they couldn't understand why it wasn't red and gray. Excuse me, and they were like a candy apple red, and they were black. So again, I think that one of the, I think that some of these people, when I've talked to them, they said that it was a very disrespectful thing to change colors and not let people know. So anyways, I think that's what spurred this motion. And what we decided to do, it was suggested, I think it was by Ms. Ross-Sikowicz, to institutionalize the colors as to a mistake like this would not happen again. And I think it's a pretty simple, very simple, straightforward. And this was a motion by Mr. Gignac and second by Ms. Ross-Sikowicz to recommend to the committee as a whole to report back to Lowell High School Subcommittee in January with findings after the high school administration and representatives from sports teams have researched the proper red and gray colors of Lowell High School on a color palette to ensure that these colors are institutionalized and used by all clubs, teams, and other school-sponsored groups when ordering new uniforms in the future. Motion.
Motion by Mr. Conway. Good to see you're wearing the proper hue. Seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Mr. Conway.
Thank you very much. And the last agenda item, Lowell High School National College Application Week. National College Application Week is an initiative that began as a pilot program of the Gear Up program in North Carolina in 2005, and the program was intended to provide high school seniors with extended opportunity and incentive to submit college applications. The target is for students, particularly for lower income families who might not otherwise file applications to colleges. And just very quickly, Mr. Mayor, this is a goal that I think the high schools certainly try to make sure that students do not fall through the cracks and that they do have a place to go after high school to continue their education. And this happens to be just another example of that, which I certainly applaud them. The resource guide entitled College Application Week. It's a toolkit for increasing access to higher education. And again, I'm not going to go through all of it, but the College Application Week can open the door, I think, for students by encouraging them to take a significant step towards college in that senior year. And the Lowell High School administrators have met with representatives from Gear Up, Middlesex Community College, UMass, and to put this program into place at Lowell High School, guidance counselors, house masters have been involved in identifying the students who might benefit most from this particular program. And at the high school, the program will be implemented as follows. Guidance counselors have selected 225 seniors to participate based on the description of the target students for the program. And on Thursday, December 13th, counselors in Gear Up and Trio advisors met with all of these students to explain the event. College Application Week will begin on Monday, December 17th, and run through Wednesday, December 19th. Again, the objective is for the program to grow at Lowell High School, certainly in the future. And we have a motion by Mr. Gignac and second by Ms. Ross-Sikowicz to recommend to the committee as a whole to accept the report as a report of progress.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gignac to accept the entire report as report of progress. Mr. Leary.
Just to go back to the first part of the agenda, to the question through you to the superintendent about the entranceway, the gate, if you will, the reception area. I guess part of the report, something said we're still waiting to make a decision regarding the personnel of that, and the motion's been there for quite some time. What are we waiting for? I mean, it's obviously a security position unless there's another way of looking at it, but this is something that's like the easy part. Hard part is actually building it and putting the money behind it. Are we really waiting for someone to make a decision as to how that would look?
To date, there hasn't been a definite opinion that has come my way as far as I'm concerned. The biggest problem was really not the who, Mr. Leary, more the the area being so cold and not being able to be inhabited because of the double door. But as far as getting back to the high school, I will most assuredly ask the headmaster what the plan is for that particular piece, because we did speak about a couple of things that particular evening, about maybe security, maybe we could do some of the technology of watching key doors up front, but I can definitely get a decision on who that should be. I know they were much more concerned about moving somebody right away because of the cold factor and the open space, more than, we didn't actually get into that detail decision-wise, because they were so concerned that a human would not be able to sit there all day no matter who. So that, but as far as that being fixed, we would be able to move forward, but I can get that.
So once the infrastructure's done, then, okay, so it shouldn't be okay, thank you.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Gignac.
That's actually, thank you, Mr. Mayor, that's actually a good point. And what I don't want to happen is for us to invest $3,000 to $5,000 on a desk with heaters on the floor, and then have nobody sit there, and then we're gonna be told that they need $40,000 for a brand-new position. So I think the decision needs to be made prior to the installation of this reception area. But, thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the Curriculum Subcommittee report and approval of the minutes of the meeting of Thursday, December 13th, 2012. Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend this meeting, so I would ask if my colleague who had called the meeting to order, Mr. Leary, would be able to offer this report.
Mr. Leary.
And I just want to say it was a major loss not having, and we didn't know what to do, so we made our way through it. It was a
Surprising.
we tried. How well we did, I guess we'll be doing it again, I guess, in January. We had in attendance with the school committee. In addition, Superintendent Franco, Assistant Superintendent Claire Abrams of Curriculum, Pat Murphy Penchard, Early Childhood District Support Specialist, and Terry O'Neill, Early Childhood District Support Specialist. There were 3 items on the agenda. The first item was a pilot program from the Kindergarten Assessment and Report Card Protocol. They put a presentation of what our pilot schools, and I'll name them, what's been going on in pre-K and kindergarten, at the Green Elge, Lincoln, McAvenue, Morey, Pine Arts, Riley, and the Rogers, really looking at assessments, and with the goal of looking at down the road that we wouldn't have a overuse of assessments, or perhaps fewer assessments would be utilized. And there's a lot of discussion regarding the program that they're looking at, and what they wanted to do at that point is really roll this into the kindergarten report card, which will be coming out in January, in late January, early February. A lot of discussion, and I think what the consensus was at this meeting was that we would have the committee and the teachers in the pilot schools to really sit down and actually bring in some parent groups to discuss a full way of implementing this and using this in the late January, February kindergarten reports. And we would further take up this discussion on January 10th. It was a good dialogue, and I think we got to take a lot of thanks to our 2 folks, Pat Murphy and Terry O'Neill, for laying the foundation at the pilot schools and the staff at those schools, because we're going to be really required to utilize that for all kindergartens going forward next school year. So at least we'll know what the pitfalls are and how to address them, and we'll have further dialogue at the January 10th meeting in terms of how we're going to look at this with the report cards for those pilot schools. And definitely getting parent involvement, which we all thought was something, it's important to make sure the customer understands what we're trying to do and get feedback from them. The second part was a brief discussion regarding a math middle school tournament, really designed by our math coordinator, Jeff Gowizda. I'm sorry, Jeff, I'm killing your name. It's my cold, Jeff, totally. What Jeff designed essentially was a tournament that consists of the following. It was an individual event of 10 problems for 30 minutes, a team event of 10 problems solved cooperatively for 20 minutes, a tiebreaker round if necessary of 5 problems, one at a time, on up to 5 minutes. And what he's designing is a field team of up to 10 members to compete in one day and have a round-robin tournament of, essentially, I think is in our middle schools. And it's really to target mathematics as a core of what our curriculum is. And his design is something I think is important and very timely at this point. So we wish him luck with that. I know as we do the Knowledge Bowl, this is something that we'd probably be looking for a lot of school committee members and other dignitaries to come in and help participate and to ref. But it's something, the initiative is great, and it's got to be, I really appreciate, and the entire committee appreciates, that our folks stand up and look for new ways to help our youngsters succeed at all levels. And this is just one example of a lot of effort on our individuals in the mathematics department. There's a motion by myself and Ms. Scott to recommend to the committee as a whole to accept this as a report of progress. In addition, we also touched base briefly on the vertical team mathematics. Again, under the direction of the mathematics coordinator, a new algebra vertical team is forming to address the following. And it was as a result of our new Common Core standards in mathematics, the district is forming a vertical team, middle school through high school, grade 5 through 12. And part of this team's work will be to consider the full range of issues related to course sequencing in mathematics at the high school and at middle school levels in light of the new standards. So it's another example of our folks coming together and working as a team and utilizing the middle school personnel as well as the high school folks to really meet the standards that we require, but will ultimately lead for improvement in our math scores. I think currently the district is recruiting participants for the vertical team. Once the team has been assembled, it will collaboratively create a timeline and goals to complete this work over a 2-year time frame. And that was also as a motion of report of progress for myself and Ms. Scott to recommend to the school committee as a whole. And we plan on taking up a lot of these initiatives again at our January 10th meeting. So I make that as a form as a motion of report of progress, Mr. Mayor.
Motion by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Martin. Any discussion? Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much. Clearly, this meeting went off like clockwork, so thank you very much. A lot of interesting topics were covered. I really am sorry to have missed it. I just want to bring some particular emphasis to the whole concept of having a math tournament for our middle schools. I just think is inspired. I think it's a fabulous idea. I think, we offer within our district, and we have to continue to offer within our district, more and more opportunities for our students to excel and for them to compete and to really be able to have those opportunities to find excellence within themselves in a lot of different ways, so that we give them opportunities with athletics and arts and math and everything else, so that all of our students have that chance. I also think that the vertical team work that's happening in mathematics is really encouraging too. The Common Core standards are really realigning the way education is going to happen in our state. And I know that here in Lowell, we've been particularly aware of it, and I think really ahead of the curve in planning and anticipating for it. And I think it's really going to be key to make sure that for our students, as we implement these changes, that we do it in a thoughtful way so that there is the appropriate sequencing. If we're driving algebra down earlier and earlier in our schedule, for lack of a better word, it does, in the end, give our students the opportunity to take more and more challenging courses at the high school. And getting them that opportunity, I think, is really exactly the direction we're all looking to move in. So the work that was done by staff, I appreciate a great deal, and clearly the other members of my subcommittee handled this quite ably. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the report? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have reports of the superintendent, district levels of school support. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make the committee aware of the work that's been ongoing as far as making sure that we support all of our schools in our strategic moves towards making sure that we all get to level 1. And so this report really talks about the district support teams, where we have made a particular focus this year on the lower level 3 schools. So we have, with your support last week, the contract went through for CTAC. That's the community team that has done the work at the Merkland School and met with teachers and did the out-of-school survey type piece with both the internal employees and, again, families. So we're really looking at the root cause and the improvement that has to happen at each one of the buildings that are level 3, so we can make sure that priority is going on. As a matter of fact, even this afternoon, I was in a meeting along with Mrs. Abrams' team as far as school improvement, looking at the specific work that has to go on in these buildings. And so I just wanted to make you all aware that that work would continue proactively to make sure that we're making the gains in that particular level. Additionally, as superintendent of schools, I'm planning to meet with principals and leaders at all different levels as a cohort group, so level 1, level 2, level 3, for the level 4 schools, really a level 1 school, so we'll kind of move that place. But as a cohort group, and then heterogeneously together to kind of look at what are the action steps that are involved in the work in the buildings. The most really exciting thing about the new accountability system as far as the levels of the schools is that schools and leaders especially are every bit as concerned in maintaining level 1 status as they are at getting out of a level 4 or level 3 status. So they're really looking at data strategically, and I just wanted to let you all know that the plans are in place to make sure that we're doing that work proactively and not waiting for data. We're using formative assessment in a very meaningful way. So any questions or comments I welcome.
Thank you. Any discussion on this report? Entertain a motion to accept this report of progress by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Ross Sikowicz. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have progress report on the motion of June 15, 2011 by Mr. Conway to ask the superintendent to explore the feasibility of creating sports-themed schools at our middle and K-8 citywide schools. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, this is just a report of progress to continue with the conversation that we began last fall with several of our coaches in the low incidence kind of sports where we didn't have a feeder session. And at that particular meeting, with the athletic director, Mr. Profio, and Mr. Conway and others and the coaches, there was a proposal that the police league would be able to work at some kind of a way to build a middle school wrestling initiative. And so this is just an update that during the vacation, that there will be a 2-day time for our young people to come together and to be part of this wrestling camp. So this went out to all middle school children, and the police department is going to work with our young people at the high school on those 2 days, and I just wanted to.
Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank Madam Superintendent for this report. Going back when I originally made the motion, I saw that there was a need for a feeder system for some of the sports. Many of the sports that we have in the city, they start right off with youth that 5, 6, 7 years old. However, some sports, there's no feeder system. And the first time that they pick up a field hockey stick, usually, is when they're a freshman in high school. And needless to say, it's very difficult to be competitive with our surrounding towns and cities and so forth. And that just happens to be one sport. I know tennis was another sport, wrestling and so forth. And I think this is this is progress. This is the beginning. And I certainly hope that we continue on this light, because I think it's extremely important that we get these kids involved at a younger age. And I think it certainly is going to help with their confidence, and it's going to help with being able to work together with individuals. I think it's extremely important. And I also I want to thank the Lowell Police Department partnering with the schools. I certainly appreciate that, and especially the areas that they're concentrating on too, is not just the wrestling, but once again other areas, which I think that's in a completely a very important component. Drug prevention, anti-bullying, health, life skills, and again, it's more than just the sport itself. That's, I think, is extremely important. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Madam Superintendent.
Mr. Gignac and then Mr. Leary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a great program, and I want to thank the Lowell Police Department and the school department, and specifically Cullum's Kids, because that organization was started while I was still in high school, I believe, and I actually wrestled with Colin Sullivan when I was a freshman. And I really like the fact that they bring in drug prevention and anti-bullying into this wrestling camp, because it's just another piece that we can instill in our students, and I'm sure they'll do a wonderful job. So if you could just relay our appreciation of the partnership, thank you.
Mr. Leary.
I just reiterate what my colleague, Mr. Gignac, articulated. Just thanks the police department for doing this, but this motion is going to be a year old in June. And the problem I keep seeing is that there's not an actual full laid out attempt at a plan. I know we have cross-country in the middle school level, pretty effective. I believe we have basketball programs, pretty effective. Mr. Conway has said this, I think, 20 times at this point on the floor alone, maybe more, about getting sports where we don't have feeders or there's not youth leagues out there. Perfect example is wrestling. This is a nice start, and I'm not trying to be not appreciative of it. The other part, maybe field hockey. Or have we even taken a survey of students to see what they might be interested in? So we could create a plan and then have a formal, here's what it takes to run this plan financially. It may take money to have coaches. It might take money to have referees. But a real, honest to good, here's what it takes, here's what they're interested in. They might be interested in judo, I don't know. But why don't we do that? Find out what they're interested in, put a full plan in place, and if they're not interested and there's not a real full plan in place, let's wrap this motion up. Because we've been looking at this, and there's been good attempts by a lot of good meaning people, but there's not a plan. And I know we can do a plan because we do have the folks that want to do stuff. I've had lots of coaches come up to me, lots of teachers saying, I like to do this, I like to do that. What we need to do is find out what it costs, what it takes, and then have the committee make a decision if we can fund it or not fund it. And it is much more than sports. It's having folks after-school programs. It's kind of it is an after-school program event, which could benefit our students. And again, I'm a little aggressive tonight. I apologize, but it's something that it is a good motion. It actually could be of significant value, but we need a real plan, and then we need to know what it might cost, and then we got to make a decision whether we're going to do it or not. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Entertain a motion to accept the report and place on file by Ms. Martin, second by Ms. Ross Sikowicz. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the personnel report. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report has the most current list of all retirements, resignations, and new hires or promotions that have happened within the last month for your review.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one question for the superintendent. I noticed on here resignation from the help desk coordinator, and that's a brand new position. And this is the time of the year where, the technology is being rolled out. Is there somebody there answering the phone calls when teachers and staff are having issues with technology at this point?
Yeah, thank you. Under resignations, that gentleman who did start back in September resigned in November. But under new hires, we did hire someone that started last Monday. So it assumed the position. There's probably about a 2.5 week overlap. But there were other people in the office during that time. But a new gentleman did begin the position last Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Entertain a motion to accept and place on file by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the Lowell High School Athletics Rule 53 waiver request. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, this is a report from Mr. Lang requesting permission from this committee to allow 8th grade middle school students to try out and participate on the Lowell High School hockey team. The school committee needs to approve this particular initiative, and if there are any details, I'm sure Mr. Lang knows better than I.
Any discussion of this report? Roll call, please. Excuse me, motion to accept by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Leary. Roll call, please.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott? 6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Thank you. Next, we have overtime and extra payments for November 2012. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the monthly report that was requested by Mr. Conway back in September for your review.
Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the superintendent, I appreciate the report, and I noticed that on page 2, excuse me, or should we say the next page after the cover, there's a statement that has been made to help, I think, clarify some of that information that we discussed in the last school committee meeting. First question is, are we going to get this report in the first school committee meeting of each month? Madam Superintendent?
Yeah, if you want it on at the end of the month is probably a better time, but I'll ask Mr. Lang if there's any difference to that.
Well,
answer.
first of all, it doesn't matter as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just speaking for myself. I don't care whether it's the beginning or the end, as long as there's a consistency on it, because the last 2 reports came out, I believe, the first school committee meeting, and then I'm looking for my night reading on the next one, and it's not there. So now it's a 2-week delay. And again, it doesn't bother me either way. Which one is going to be easier or more appropriate or whatever is fine, as long as there's a, excuse me, as long as there's a consistency with it. That's all I'm looking for on that. I do have a couple questions about it. I think it's a better report than we had before, but there are still some things that we need to take a look at. There's a question I have here is, do we have a line item for overtime in the budget? Madam?
If you like,
Mr. Lane?
yeah, no, there are several line items for overtime. And then there are other different accounts that would pay for advisor stipends, things of that sort.
Okay, so they'd be for each department, not just one single line item, is that
Oh,
correct?
right, yeah, it'd be by program.
Okay. The other thing I asked for was and we talked about it in great length, is tracking different positions, making sure that, that if there is a problem in a certain area, that we can address it without waiting 12 months. I don't see that in this report, whether it's cumulative or not. I don't see that. That's
No.
what I asked for before, because it would get an idea. I would have an idea whether if in a particular area there was X amount of dollars overtime, the following month is the same position warranting the same amount of money overtime, or more or less, or whatever. So, I mean, I want to see that combination. I think, is that possible that we can do that?
Yeah, what I tried to say at the last meeting, I can run the report really any way the committee asks. This is a monthly report that details all of the different overtime and stipends broken down by individual. If you want it to be quarterly, I can have the computer run it, and it will provide a 3-month snapshot. Whatever this committee votes on and directs me to do, I'm happy to do.
Right.
I do track this stuff. I don't know specifically what individual members would want to see, so this is broken down monthly. If you'd like it broken down by position, or to look at a 3-month snapshot or 6-month snapshot, you would just have to give me some direction on that.
No, I think we discussed that. We discussed that at the last meeting, and I think the whole idea of what we voted on to have it monthly, which is fine. But I think it's important to find out tracking to make sure how much money are we paying overtime for specific jobs. So it's just merging month by month by month to come out with X amount of dollars for an individual that has overtime. Anyways, I think that's do you understand what I'm talking about on that, Madam Superintendent? Okay. Now let me.
I honestly don't.
Okay. All right. Let me explain it to you. let's assume, just for argument's sake, you, in September, got $1,500 overtime. October, you get $1,200 overtime. I want to see the 15 and the 12 together to show that you have received $2,700 overtime so far. You see what I'm saying there? Because at the end of the year, we see that Mr. Lang has $18,000 in overtime. Well, you know, when you have a report of, should we say, 65 or 70 pages, you know, people might not necessarily catch that. And that's why I want to say that one of the problems that we had before is, and it came out in the newspaper, where somebody was making, I don't know, like $30,000 or $40,000 overtime or some crazy amount of money. And needless to say, that doesn't look too good at all. And it's like, well, we should attract that. We should attract that to make sure that stuff like that doesn't happen. That's all I'm saying. I think that would be, I think that would be fairly easy to do, wouldn't it?
That's a different report than you asked for. That's a cumulative report.
Correct.
Of monthly over. That wasn't the request. The request was to provide a monthly report detailing all overtime or extra payments during a specific period.
Right. But the last time we discussed this, I mentioned that to you, that we would be able to merge it.
I can.
And you said you could do that, right?
I can do the report any way you direct me to, but I would like the committee, if they would like the report in a different fashion, to direct that, so that it's clarity, and month to month, we don't have to talk about what to include, what not to include. So if you'd like a cumulative report, if you could give me a motion making that request, I would be happy to provide that information.
Well, I'd like to make a motion on that, Mr. Mayor.
Motion by Mr. Conway to request a cumulative report, seconded by Ms. Martin. On the motion first, Mr. Leary, and then Ms. Martin.
Yeah, can we get this in Excel format? I mean, that way, you know, my 5-year-old could go in and manipulate it and look at whatever he wants to look at. Because I think it really, well, you know, that would be, so if I have a different item I would think is important, I could drill down and look right at that information. So that's the first question. I mean, we can support the cumulative, that makes sense. If you're gonna follow, you know, whatever department, how much overtime someone's getting, in 3 months you wanna see if there's a pattern. And you can ask a question, why are these guys getting overtime? That's fine. So we can support that and we can move on. But what's even better is if we could put this in Excel format, so if I think of a different way of looking at it, I don't have to make a 5-minute speech on the floor. I can just do it and then put a motion to it if I'd like, or call up the superintendent and say, I got a question, can you answer it? So I guess, you know, can we do it that way?
Yeah, if I can, the way the report comes out now, and again, it's a sorting issue. I just have them sort it from the highest paid to the lowest paid. I'm sure the report can just be provided monthly in Excel. The easiest thing for me to do, quite honestly, if that was it and you wanted to manipulate it, would be to probably email it out monthly with the year-to-date budget reports that I sent in Excel. And then if you have a particular question about it, you could bring it up at the next meeting. That would probably be the easiest.
And we could do the cumulative too, because I think that's what the member wants, and I think that's an easy enough thing to do. But I'd like, if we can, and if it's not too much, I don't want to cause hours of work, but it's just something that if some other question comes up, you can take the time and just manipulate it yourself and then ask more intelligent questions. But I think, again, if you could get the cumulative and ultimately an Excel sheet, then we'd probably be in a good position to go forward on this issue. Thank you.
Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much. I just want to be clear, because I would like to avoid having the conversation, you know, as we keep fine-tuning this one report. But I'm going to anticipate that Mr. Conway would like to be able to have not only a monthly, but a running year-to-date, so that as you're pulling this together, if it could have both those. I just don't want us, as we have this conversation about only year-to-date, to ignore that there's going to be still a need for a monthly number. But I do think that if we're dumping it into an Excel spreadsheet, we should be able to do whatever we want with it. And that should be fairly easy. But I would also say, as you kind of get into this, you should feel free to let us know if this is becoming a cumbersome thing. If it's easy just to use the canned reports, we can talk about that at that point. But if doing it in Excel and making it a live document that we can work with, I think that would be the easiest way for the committee to get the information.
Thank you. Mr. Conway.
Thank you, and I appreciate my colleagues for helping clarify some of this. And the whole idea is, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's important that, again, this is the taxpayers' money. I want to make sure that we take a look at this report and we can understand it. And I'll be quite frank with you. I showed this report to 4 different people. They're educated people. They didn't understand it. They didn't understand it. And that's what I want to make sure that, you know, for example, and I'm only going to use a couple examples. I mean, there's obviously 67 pages, so I'm not going to go through that. But let's just take, for example, on page 1, up in the top, the very, very first one. Now, you and I might know what that means, but I don't know if the public does, because where it says units, hours, and days, there's none. It says 0, but yet we're paying $4,894. Again, all I'm looking for is that I think anybody that picks this up, whether it's the newspaper or whether it's the public, that it's very clear. That's all. I mean, there's a let's say, for example, page 2 on number, I think it's number 14. It says here, now there's a pay code. And I think the pay code is 233, is that correct? All right, well, in the pay code description that you have on these 2 pages, there's no 233. You see what I'm saying? So in other words, it says here, pay code, special detail schools, whatever, and it's got hours, units, days, nothing, but yet we paid $488.94. And I'm looking, I'm saying, oh, what is that? And I look at 233 because I'm using the code. That code isn't even there. You see what I'm saying there? So I think it's just a matter of, and I don't want to be dealing with this every school committee meeting either. So I mean, I think we need to just tweak it a little bit better here so that when we pick it up, we should be able to understand exactly what we're talking about and exactly what we're looking at. I mean, we got a code down here that's not even listed, and we're spending money. Now, I can understand when it says 200 and it's overtime at 1.5 and it's 59 hours at 1923. I mean, that's pretty clear. That's what I think we need to do. Now, down on the bottom of page 2, you know, again, we paid $2,249.33, and there's nothing down there. There's no hours, units, days.
Right.
All right? Do you see I'm not going to go over all of these, but I mean, do you see what I'm saying?
No, I see what you're saying. I'd like to just walk you through a couple, though.
Sure.
Like the first one and then the last one on the second page, the after-school advisors club stipend. These are advisors at Lowell High School who get a stipend for doing their work. And the pay description is $193 after-school club advisor. It's a prorated stipend that they get either 3 or 4 times a year.
Right.
Unless I were to manually go into this report and type a little description for each entry about what it is, which would be incredibly cumbersome. Okay. You know, some of these things, it's almost easier if you just ask me on the floor, well, what does 194 mean? Well, it's a club advisor at the high school. You know, overtime as far as that custodian. 233 is the special detail. It's the account that the overtime gets paid for if someone rents one of our facilities and then the organization renting it. It's a special detail account that the fee goes into, and then the payment comes out of that account. It's still the custodian's overtime rate.
Why would, you know, on page 6, there seemed to be quite a few that fell into that category, the special detail schools, it says here.
Yeah, they're all school custodians that are working overtime, covering for people
and
that
I'm
are
not,
renting the
and I'm
schools.
not, you know, I'm not disagreeing with the fact of giving them the overtime, or if that's what they need in order to take care of the situation. All I'm saying is that, again, we look at it. You want people to be able to look at this thing and say 233. Then we should have the code that says 233 in there. Okay, and.
Can I propose something?
Sure.
If, on a monthly basis, when I send this report out, if I do it in Excel, and I send you one Excel file with your monthly report, that's the month snapshot, day 1 to day 30. Then I could send you a cumulative year-to-date based on the fiscal year. So July 1 to whatever, cumulative report, also in Excel, and then you can sort it and manipulate it in whatever fashion you like. I'll email it to you with the monthly year-to-date budget report in case you want to look at specific budget lines. And then if you have a specific question, you could put a request, call me personally anytime, or you could put a request on the agenda, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. That'd be easier than actually just preparing this report and not knowing ahead of time coming in what you might ask. That would probably be the easiest way to address this.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Leary?
So some of this overtime is not even really out of our budget. Some of it's really out of, if you're renting,
Yeah, special detail, yeah.
so you wouldn't be able to track it in the budget because someone's paying for it because they rented the hall on the weekend, and because they rented, you had to get a custodian. You can't just simply walk in and hang out on your own.
Right.
All right, so how do we identify that? I mean, most of the overtime's really not even for the custodians on weekends. Is not going to be, this is for a later date, but just a thought in terms of there's going to be more questions coming out on it. Let's preempt them as much as possible. I think the Excel worksheet is a good start, and I think we can also provide training and development in terms of how to manipulate that, and I'm willing to sit down with anybody to do that because it's a pretty effective tool to move forward in an enlightening way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Entertain motion to accept this report of progress by Ms. Ross-Sikowicz, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Under new business, we have ratification of the memorandum of agreement with the LSAA, Merkland Elementary School, Level 4 agreement. Any discussion? Move to approve by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Leary. Roll call, please.
Mr. Conway.
Yes.
Mr. Gignac.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Ms. Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Ms. Ross-Sikowicz.
Yes.
Ms. Scott. 6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Thank you. Next, we have the ratification of the memorandum of agreement with the SEIU, Merkland Elementary School Level 4 agreement. Move for approval by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Ms. Ross-Sikowicz. Roll call, please.
Mr. Conway.
Yes.
Mr. Gignac.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Ms. Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Ms. Ross-Sikowicz.
Yes.
Ms. Scott. 6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Finally, under civil service, we have the SEIU, Lowell School Clerical Union, hereby requests to donate 17 sick days to Kim Normandy, a Lincoln school clerk. Move to approve by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Leary. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Conway.
Yes.
Mr. Gignac.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Ms. Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Ms. Ross-Sikowicz.
Yes.
Ms. Scott. 6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Thank you. At this point, I entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved by Ms. Ross-Sikowicz, seconded by Mr. Conway. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned. Hope you all enjoy your holidays.